Chapter: The Throne of Snow and Storm. The storm that sired you will one day kneel to the storm you sire. Robert the Seer, Runes of the Red Moon. Snow came sideways on the wind that day, cold, sharp, dancing like tiny blades as they fell upon the stone bones of Fang Hall. The sky hung low, bruised purple and ash gray, veined with flickers of distant lightning. It was the kind of day Vargheim was born for, hard, honest, and full of breath. The courtyard below stirred with life. Two brothers sparred near the ice well, wooden blades cracking like thunder. Iron-wrapped boots stomped against the frost-hardened ground. A row of children threw snowballs at a half-finished stone bear statue. A blacksmith barked orders to his apprentice while hammering a broken axe head back into shape. Hunters returned from the white wood with hairs on their belts, blood steaming in the chill. And everywhere, the great gray wolves of Vargheim wandered freely, some asleep in the snow, others sitting regal beside their chosen kin. This was the heart of the Fanglands. Not war or prophecy, not the crown or the blade, it was life. High above them all, upon the worn steps of the hall, stood the old Wolf King. He leaned on a railing of black oak and snowbone, the grain marked with battle scratches and age cracks like the hands that gripped it. His cloak was made of a slain direwolf's pelt. His breath coiled in the air like a second spirit. His eyes, sharp and frost-colored, watched his people, not as a ruler demanding tribute, but as a father watching the breath of all he'd ever bled to protect. And then came footsteps, measured, armored, unmistakable. He did not turn. "You walk heavy today, firstborn," the old man said. Linton stepped beside him, tall and silent, snow still melting on his shoulders. A black pauldron bore the fang-crowned sigil, scraped and nicked from old wars. His hair was pulled back, his face half-shadowed by the rising storm clouds overhead. The silence between them was not cold. It was carved from stone and memory. They stood together for a while, saying nothing. Below, the wolf boy, the king's grandson, chased a silver cub through the powder. The boy laughed wild, cheeks red from the cold, fur cloak billowing behind him like a banner. The cub yipped and skidded, playfully lunging and tumbling, never far from the boy's side. The sound of it, a child's joy, cut through the wind like a song from another world. "He's fast," the king said, "stronger than he looks." Linton nodded once, but his eyes didn't soften. His mother was a traitor. The old king glanced at him. She was, and her bones rot where they fell, but the boy is not her. "I don't care if he is or isn't," Linton said darkly. "I'll raise him to be 10 times the wolf she ever was, but I'll never speak her name again. She doesn't deserve it." The old king gave a low nod, then let the snow bury her. "I still see the way she looked at me the day she left," Linton muttered, "like I was the fool for staying loyal." "You weren't the fool," the old king said. "You were the flame, she was the ash, and now she's gone." A long silence. Below, the boy rolled in the snow, shrieking as the cub leapt atop him, tail wagging. Their joy echoed between the stone walls of the hall. "I've given the realm my sword," Linton said, "my rage, my years." "Aye," the old king replied, his voice low, "but not your heart, not your joy. That is what makes the bloodline strong. Not just war, not just vengeance. Love, Linton, fire that warms, not just burns." Linton said nothing. "Find a woman," the old king added, stern but not cruel. "Or I will, and play with your son while you can, before the crown bites, and the weight of it breaks your back as it did mine." A gust of wind howled over the stones. Below, the boy squealed in joy as the silver cub leapt into his arms, tail wagging like a drumbeat. The old king watched his son carefully. "There," he said, voice low. "That boy, he will be the storm that humbles us all." He paused. "Go to him, before he forgets how your laughter sounds." Linton's eyes flickered. Something inside cracked. He gave a quiet exhale, then stepped forward. Down the steps he went, slowly at first, the wind catching his cloak. The people looked up as he passed. A warrior training a squire paused mid-blow. A woman halted in stirring her stew. The sound of his boots rang against the stone, echoing the weight he carried. The boy turned, mid-roll, face beaming. "Papa!" Linton stopped 3 strides away. The cub barked. Then, without warning, the firstborn charged, diving into the snow with a wolfish growl. The boy shrieked with laughter as Linton scooped him up, spinning him around, both of them tumbling together in a storm of powder and joy. The cub leapt on them, tail thrashing. Laughter rang off the walls of Fang Hall, and the people of Vargheim, hardened as they were, smiled. Some laughed, a few wept silently, for they had feared the firstborn had forgotten how. Up above, the old Wolf King stood unmoving, hands still resting on the frost-worn rail. His gaze lingered on the boy and the firstborn tumbling in the snow. Then, rough and low, he called, "Jack." From the stone-shadowed archway, a cloaked figure stepped forward. Jack wore a thick mantle of gray wolf pelts, pinned at the shoulder with a ring of blackened iron. His tunic was dark wool, his boots strapped tight with leather cords. Etched into his forearms, visible just beneath the rolled sleeves, were rune tattoos that shimmered faintly, not glowing yet. But the storm remembered. He looked like any other warrior of the north, grounded, weathered, prepared. On his belt hung a plain hand axe, across his back a long blade wrapped in wolf hide. At his side padded Frankenspine, the stitched war cat. Massive, silent, green-eyed, its fur was thick with frost, stitched where it had once been torn, a creature of battle and loyalty. The old king did not turn his head. "You will watch over my boys, won't you?" Jack came to stand beside him, tall and still as the mountain. "On my life, my king, by claw, by flame, by storm." And for the first time in many long winters, the old Wolf King smiled. Fury can protect a kingdom, but only love can build one. The Feast of Oaths, reforged in fire and steel. Night ruled Vargheim like a black wolf, but Fang Hall burned against the darkness, a great beast of timber and bone crowned in fire. Its walls quaked with the roar of voices, the pounding of shields, the wild music of horns that spilled mead as thick as blood. Shadows writhed in the torchlight, crawling across the carved runes and wolf skulls lining the hall like silent gods. The oath fire howled in the hall's heart, flames clawing at the smoke-veined rafters. Sparks leapt like crimson ravens as warriors bared their arms and carved oaths into their own flesh, blood hissing when it kissed the firestones. Runes burned red on skin, binding men to vows heavier than mountains. The banners of the four realms hung high above, shuddering in the heat like omens. Wolf, bear, mist, serpent. Four shadows dancing in the same blaze. Tonight was for song and steel, for promises forged in pain. But beneath the thunder of laughter and the stench of roasted elk, the air tasted wrong, like iron waiting to sing. The chain fang. At the second lord's table sat Linton, a storm shackled in flesh. Wolf pelts lay dark across his shoulders, their fur stiff with frost. Frost fire crawled faint along the runes etched into his iron bracers, their glow ebbing like the breath of sleeping gods. Beside him rested no sword like other jarls carried, but a weapon that looked forged from the spine of a beast and the hunger of war. A chain, black forged, thick as a warrior's wrist, its links carved in the shape of fangs. At its end, a solid iron sphere bristled with jagged teeth of steel. It lay heavy across the mead table, silent for now, but when the fire struck its curves, the light crawled like blood across bone. The weapon was called Grotbani, Stone Slayer, a gift from the old Wolf King himself. Hammered in the smoke veins of Ravenforge, its metal quenched in blood and oath fire. Linton's fingers coiled around the chain, feeling the iron bite like a whisper from hell. A weapon like this was not worn for ceremony. It was carried when wolves smelled blood. The voice in the flame, the seat across from him was briefly empty, until a figure emerged from the firelit edge of the hall, wolf pelts across his shoulders and boots still dusted with frost. Jack. A wanderer to some, a storm-bound ghost to others, but to Linton he was more. A brother not by blood but by fire. Jack's rune-tattooed arms were half-bared, the ink flickering faintly as he sat, leaning forward with that stillness that only warriors of long winters carried. Frankenspine, the stitched war cat, prowled silently beneath the table, curling beneath Linton's feet. Jack's voice was low and steady, as if the storm itself paused to listen. "Linton, you feel it, don't you?" Linton's jaw clenched. His hand tightened around the chain. "Speak plain, brother." Jack's eyes scanned the hall, reading every shadow like a battlefield. The corners where mead flowed too easily. The smiles that didn't reach the eyes. The weight. It's in the stone, in the breath. Laughter rings false, horns are lifted high, but too many eyes watch the fire instead of the king. A pause. Then Jack leaned in, voice sharper now. "There's venom in the hall." Linton's gaze swept the crowd. Jarls hunched in knots of whispers behind silvered horns, their rings catching firelight like serpent eyes. His grip on Griotbani tightened, and the iron links gave a low, hungry clink, like a predator's purr. Whose hand holds the fang? Jack shook his head once. Not sure, but if I were a serpent, I'd be here. Tonight, close to the fang crown, close to your son. The mead in Linton's horn tasted bitter as blood. He stood slow, the chain slithering after him like a steel worm, the iron ball whispering sparks across the floor. Warriors looked up, laughter hitching for a heartbeat, then crashing back like a wave hiding the undertow. Stay sharp, Linton growled. If there's venom in this hall, we'll rip its fangs out before dawn. The Wolf King above. The stone steps groaned under his boots as Linton climbed to the high seat. Griotbani dragged behind him with the sound of bone grinding bone, sparks blooming when the iron kissed stone. Eyes followed him, some bright as wolves, others hooded like serpents fat on secrets. Above them all, on the shadow-drenched balcony, stood the old Wolf King. A shape carved from frost and wrath, his cloak billowing like torn night, the fang crown burning dull on his brow, runes crawling with ember light. His hand gripped the rail as if throttling the hall itself. He didn't turn when Linton reached him. His voice rolled out like the first growl of a storm over black seas. You smell it too. Linton coiled the chain in his fist, iron sighing like a serpent in sleep. His eyes burned cold as glacier fire. Jack says there's venom in the smoke, a traitor at the feast. The old wolf's lips peeled back from his teeth in something colder than a smile. There is always a traitor at a feast. Gold speaks louder than oaths, and fear louder still. Linton's grip tightened until the chain bit blood from his palm. Give me a name, father, and I'll bleed them on the oath fire before the next horn is raised. The old king turned, his eyes gray storms torn with lightning. If I had a name, his bones would already burn. Listen, watch, wolves hunt in silence, but when you strike, strike so the gods tremble. Below them, laughter crashed like shields, a tide roaring toward the dark. The wolf boy darted through the throng, silver cub snapping at his heels, his laughter bright as broken glass. For a breath, the old king's gaze softened, then hardened like the ice of the grave glacier. Guard him well, Linton, he said, voice raw as flayed steel, for when the runes wake they will demand more than oaths. Far off in the smoke, eyes burned green as serpent fire, and in a sheath of black oak, a blade whispered for blood.